Imagine having OCD and one of your intrusive thoughts is being terrified that you might be gay and go to hell, and then you realize that you really are gay, so just let that sink in. So let's watch this clip from the Made It Out podcast.
Sophomore in high school, it was all kind of based on like anxiety and obsessive thoughts, which hilariously, one of my obsessive thoughts was fear of being a lesbian.
What?
Yeah.
And how did that manifest
Now, when I
itself?
talk about people experiencing religious trauma, this is exactly what I'm talking about. And I want to talk about OCD, what it is and how we treat it, and how this case is really unusual. Let's watch a little bit more of this.
So young. And I think a lot of it was also based in religious fear as well, because I was raised in I wasn't raised in a crazy religious environment, but I went to Roman Catholic schools my entire life, literally from kindergarten to end of high school. So I think I had a lot of like religious trauma around it too. So no, I mean, I was just like terrified that I was a lesbian and would just like think about it 24/7, would like not hug like women or other girls because I was like had such a fear around it.
Wow.
Yeah.
My name is Katie. I've been a licensed therapist for 20 years. Please subscribe and leave a comment. Thank you. So part of OCD can be intrusive thoughts, and the other part is compulsive behaviors. Now, we all have weird thoughts sometimes, and that these just pop up and we can usually ignore them and move on. But an intrusive thought interrupts day-to-day life, and people obsess about them and cannot make them go away. It would be like a pop-up ad showing up on your screen constantly, and you can't do anything about it. These are typically very distressing thoughts for the person. Some common intrusive thoughts are sexual thoughts or images that you might find disturbing, and these are things you actually don't want to participate in. These can be thoughts also of violence or hurting your own children or a pet, and these are things that people actually have no intention of acting on, but they feel a lot of shame around having them. People are usually really embarrassed to talk about them, thinking it must mean something horrible about them. In this case with Christy Gramlich, the guest of this podcast, she's saying that her fear about possibly being gay was so extreme that she wouldn't even hug her friends. Now, this would be tricky as a therapist because usually intrusive thoughts are things that people are fearful of becoming or violent acts that they would never do. But if I had a client who had the intrusive thought about being gay, I would approach it with being supportive if they were. I would ask them if there was any truth behind that thought and why they were fearful of it, and we would explore that thought some more. With other types of intrusive thoughts, we don't really try to find any meaning behind them because that just starts a cycle of more ruminating, and then the thoughts actually get stronger. Therapists use varying techniques for these. I use acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, and some people do need medications for OCD. So in this podcast, Christy goes on to discuss how she goes to college and falls in love with a woman, but she stays in denial about her sexuality. And because she went to a Catholic school all the way up through 12th grade, she can't come to terms with her sexuality. This is a really interesting story, so go watch that. This is an example of how homophobia in the church affects people's mental health and causes internalized homophobia. And I've made a whole video on internalized homophobia that I will link here. And when she did come out, it wasn't safe, and she experienced a lot of bullying in college. So it's an inspirational story, and she's had a lot to overcome. I'll leave a link to this podcast in the comments. It's one of my favorite podcasts. The stories are from lesbian and queer women, and they're very relatable. There's a lot of laughing. And if you struggle with OCD, please talk to a mental health therapist who specializes in OCD. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.